Okay, we'll declare the meeting open at 8:32. Thank you all for your attendance. Remember, this meeting has been audio recorded and those in attendance should refrain from making any offensive statements. There are to be no other recordings of this meeting without the prior authorisation of the committee. Call for apologies.
None received, Mr. Chair.
No apology. Councillor Fisher would be an apology. I think he asked for leave. So.
Oh, did he? Okay, sorry, I wasn't aware of that, yeah.
Yeah, so Councillor Fisher, got a mover. Move Councillor Burns, second Councillor Watts. All in favour? Against? Carried. Confirmation of the minutes, the Corporate Services Committee held on the 21st of May. Mover. I'll move.
I'll second it. So, yeah, I wasn't there, so I'm not. I'll second.
Okay with that? All in favour? Against? Carried. Declarations of interest? 0.
Nil received.
Okay. We'll move straight over to the business items. CORP 06.1 Financial Summary and Investment Report on page 1. Thank you, Mr. Phelps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, councillors, we'll just take you through an overview of where council's budget to actuals are sitting at this point in time for the month ended May. So it's only got 1 month left in the financial year coming through. So as you can see there on page 2, we'll start the actual financial information. So year to date to May 2021, actuals to budget, it has a positive variance of about 1.77 million compared to about 1.78 million from the previous month in April. The main movers in regards to this, we'll just walk through the different levels of the more or less the budget, being the revenue and expenditure. So our operating revenue overall, it's behind by nearly about $500,000, so 469,000, which is about 0.09% of the overall budget year to date to the end of May. The main contributors to that, so is the private works revenue. It's lower than budget by about 86,000. So the demand for private works is being lower, coupled with we've had limited staff available to do the works anyway. So that's been a bit lower than anticipated, but obviously the costs have been down as well. General purpose revenue, which is more or less our rates and our interest components, it's lower than budget at the moment, which is a little bit lower in our financial assistance grants and interest on investments, plus also interest on overdue rates, which the first 6 months was at 0%. So we didn't get any interest on that first 6 months. So it's a little bit lower coming through, so by 110,000. Aerodrome revenues down by about 445,000, mainly due to the monthly progress claims for the grant funding for the project out there. So April and May are still to be submitted. Plus also the general user fees are a bit lower than normal, mainly due to the development happening out there in one respect, with the airport being closed for a month at one point. But those movements are beginning to increase. So that revenue should be going well into the new financial year. And the final one there is the water supply usage. It's a little bit higher. So it's gone the other way by about 124,000. And it's just the final billing for May. So we've got a little bit extra in water usage consumption, which has been good. Moving into the non-operating revenue and expenses. Here we're behind budget by about $500,000 again. And it's 2 internal items that council does have, which is our internal fleet hire charges. It's lower by about 370, and it's overall relatively consistent. It's about down by about probably 8% at this point in time, year to date. And it's with our capital works program, which you'll see shortly, it's a little bit behind schedule at the moment. So it affects the utilisation of our internal fleet that we're being used. on those capital works projects. And also the second one down there, the gravel revenue from the quarries, it's about down by about 168,000. And again, it has an effect from our capital works program. So if our capital works program's a little bit behind, obviously our gravel material is lower as well. Also, we've been going through some compliance updates with the Q and pit, which has reduced the level of gravel coming out of that pit at this point in time. So moving then down into the operating expenditure. Here, nearly spot on budget overall, but there's a lot of movers, especially coming through to only 1 month out from the end of the year, that are ups and downs throughout the budget itself. So we'll just run through those at a high level. So the fleet operating costs lower by about $260,000, $265,000, lower mainly due to the utilisation of the plant, one, because the fuel consumption's down. Plus also our service and repair maintenance costs have been down as well, which has been good. So our fleet's travelling quite well at the moment. Drainage, stormwater drainage maintenance is down by about $90,000, $89,000. Lower than expected maintenance activities have been undertaken to date. So we've got to focus on that going into the new financial year to improve our drainage maintenance. The waste landfill costs are higher than budget by about $323,000. A little bit increased in curbside collection and also higher state levies, the state levy coming through. We've had a lot more revenue coming in, so we've done a vote over the course of the year where we've had a lot more revenue coming through land disposals at our sites. So obviously with the additional volumes coming into the actual sites, we've had to pay extra levies coming through. And some of that's our own internal material going into those pits, which will come out and we'll get a deduction for as well. So there could be a catch up overall.
The state levy.
Yep.
The state levy amount hasn't gone up. It's just our increase in waste
volume,
has gone up.
volume.
So that's what.
Yep.
Sorry, Wayne, can I just ask why? So why has that gone up?
Just general usage.
Yeah, through the chair, it's mainly because of material that council's actually taken to the landfill, particularly at Aberdeen. A lot of soil and material that's gone into the site, but we are looking at reusing some of that material on other construction jobs. So some of that will come out.
So so with respect to material that we've taken to the not tips, but whatever that waste facilities. So that's parked somewhere, is it, so that we can get it back?
That's correct. So it's stockpiled and it's clean fill.
Yeah, so you get a credit when you take it back out again if you need it.
So hopefully, Councillor Abbott, that'll fix the budget come through. Councillor Watts coming into the mix into June. The bottom one there, the town planning, health and building control costs. Overall, they're lower by about nearly $250,000, and the costs have mainly been reduced based on the number of vacancies in that department at this point in time, which we're looking at recruiting over the course of the next
Could I
few
just
months.
ask a question? I do apologise for coming in late. We are having some good roadworks done out there, which I'm very pleased to see and we held up. The waste, you speak about when that waste is taken out, we get a credit. How much is that credit? It costs us for that fill to go in, isn't it $70 a tonne?
It's the actual levy coming out, which is about mid-$80 a tonne.
Right, okay,
That's the actual levy.
thank you.
Okay. Moving into the top of the next page on page 4, aerodrome operational costs are higher than budget by nearly $100,000 at this point in time, just with additional costs for administration operations and facility maintenance there. We've had a bit of a review of that. Some of those costs are a little bit higher based on supervision of the development out there. So some of those may be reallocated. Some of those costs for the airport reporting officer out there will be reallocated to the project itself.
Sorry, so I'm not clear on these costs. What are they for?
Director of Corporate.
The staff basically, we're just doing a bit of a review at the moment. There's been a lot of overtime and weekend work involved by the staff. It's mainly Mark Rutherford and their airport coordinator, and it's mainly managing things around the project. So we're doing a review of this cost and charging back the component that is outside normal operations back into the project costs. It'll be funded by the project. So we're not sure how much of the 99 at this stage will go back, but a fair amount of it will go back.
Thank you. And sorry to go back, Wayne, but I just wanted to ask you about the town planning, health and building control. Because what's that one for?
Director of Corporate, of Environmental.
Yeah, so this covers our planning services, health and building services, so food shop inspections, on-site sewage management inspections and so forth. We've had a number of vacancies in the department for quite some time. And because of those vacancies, there's savings in the budget.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Wayne, just on the airport, as we know, VIPs flew in yesterday for announcement at the racetrack. The GM and I met with that pilot yesterday out on site. He gave us a score of 10 out of 10 for the tarmac works and an 8 out of 10 for the actual runway surface. Which is problem. Well, we know that runway's still got a couple of little things, but I thought it was very good, and he spoke very, very highly of the overall view from the air of the whole precinct of the airport.
Good to know. Moving into the next item there, the sporting grounds, venues and service and maintenance costs. They're up by nearly 200,000 at this point in time. It's mainly costs around just general sports ground maintenance and servicing, plus also the White Park operations. So obviously with White Park operations, the facility gaining a bit of momentum down there with a lot of events and so forth. We're doing a full review of the operations down there and making sure that we're actually recovering our revenue streams. So over the next 6 months, I know the GM's taken an interest in to try and look at the whole operations down there and look at the fee structure as such. So we're doing a full review of that precinct at this point in time. But over the year, we've had a few extra costs in keeping and maintaining that facility up to spec with regards to a lot of the new events that we've actually brought to the town.
So Wayne, sorry. So we put White Park in that as well, do we? That's all included in that?
For the 2021 year,
Yep.
It's included in the sporting ground and venues. It will have its own cost codes and revenue streams in next year's Depop.
Thank you.
Public library costs, a bit lower by about nearly 90,000, to $88,000 there. Lower costs in regards to the operations following the departure from the regional library. So we've had a few savings from leaving the regional library, which has been good. So we've got some collection acquisitions happening at the moment as well. So we'll be going through those in June. Bridge maintenance costs are down by about $140,000. Just lower maintenance on all our bridges. As you know, we've secured funding for the replacement of 14 of our existing structures. So those ones obviously won't be maintained. So we'll only have probably about 3 bridges left that will have a big maintenance bill on coming through for the next financial year. So that's pretty well a good win for council.
Would I be correct? They would be the wooden bridges. But what I'm saying is that when we put in a concrete structure, the maintenance on those, what's it cost? It must be very little, or is it still
minimal.
the same?
It's minimal compared to a timber structure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Moving into the next one, RMS state road costs, higher than budget by nearly about $270,000 overall. Increase mainly in the works out there. So we've actually had a bit more of activity out there doing some individual price works orders, plus also the routine maintenance. So we'll receive increase in our revenue streams for that coming through into June. So that'll offset that overspend there. And the bottom one there, the water supply operational cost for Murrundi and Scone, it's higher by nearly $220,000 to date. So we're just having a look at those costs just to make sure that we don't have any renewal costs in there. So if we've renewed our mains or pipes, we'll actually pull those costs back out and capitalise those into the financial statements. So it's one that we have to have a bit of a look at and just make sure that there's no major costs in there attached to them. Moving then into our biggest area where there is the positive variance to budget when you're coming through, which is about $2.65 million, and it's nearly 9% of the overall to budget that we're out with the variance. So the items in here are highlighted that the airport development is higher than budget at the moment by 275,000, mainly due to the schedule being in front of budget. So it's only really a timing issue in regards to that item. Main Road 105, the repair works up Beltree's Hill there. It's lower than budget by nearly $290,000. That project works is behind schedule at the moment, and the majority of those constructions works will be deferred till 21-22. We're actually acquiring our materials now and putting them on site so that we can start the construction work probably in July, August next year. Main Road 62, Bunnan Bridge to Carr Springs turnoff. It's lower than budget by nearly 300,000 to date. Works are continuing there.
You mean this year?
Yeah, this year, yeah.
This financial year. Is that what you mean?
No, this year, this current financial year we're in.
Yeah.
It's
Next year.
oh, okay.
July, August.
No, that's for the Main Road 105. So the works for it.
I'm back on.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. No, the actual. So we're acquiring all our materials now, stockpiling them. The construction work won't start until next year. So we're deferring some of those costs out to next year in the budget. Yep. Yep. So July, August next year. Yep.
This year.
What? Next financial year?
Yeah, next financial year, but you didn't say financial.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I asked. That was what I asked, wasn't it? Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
Very good.
It's all right, I know.
Clarified. Yeah. Moving into, so Main Road 62, that one there is lower than by 300,000. So obviously some of the, we're looking at that project. It's continuing at the moment, but there is some that we're deferring until the 2022 year. So it hasn't quite progressed as quick as what we anticipated coming through, but the works are continuing on that site. Local roads, heavy patching and resheeting is lower by about 145,000. So the works again are behind schedule, with some heavy patching currently being completed. But there's a resheeting program where we had about 150K, which we're going to defer until next year. So it's going to go into an RA and then come back in.
Probably comes up with the infrastructure. But where is that proposed reshooting?
That would have to go through the infrastructure meeting.
It just doesn't seem to happen.
Yeah. So we'll need to get a program through infrastructure to provide to councillors to please? Have a look.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll just take that on note to make
that
report happen. Moving into the next one, which is the level crossing works. It's lower than budget by about 120,000. There's been some slight delays with the works. The contractor is returning in June though to finalise those works. So we've done 5 level crossings, the actual approaches to those level crossings, and that's mainly to reduce our maintenance on those crossings coming forward. Curb and guttering replacement up in Main Street in Marundi. It's behind budget by about 201. It's had a few delays with the heritage issues. So what they're doing with that guttering up there, they're actually taking out the gutter and then replacing it back as heritage guttering. So there's been a bit of delay with that, but the actual contract has been engaged and that work should be completed by the end of June. So
Increased overall cost as well, hasn't it?
Effectively, yes, it's a lot more expensive to do that.
Through the chair, it's just reduced the amount of guttering that we can fix up.
But per metre has increased the cost extremely. So the intersection at Stafford Street and Liverpool Streets, just in front of the hospital entrance there. So the works are continuing up there. So the completion of that's late this month or early in July. So, so hopefully it'll be finalised very shortly. Moving on to page 6, here you've got the Scone Cbd Revitalization. So the project's slightly behind budget at the moment, just delays in awarding the tender for 133 Kelly Street, the breezeway going through there and the amenities. Obviously we went to tender and those prices came in rather large. So we had to go back and negotiate. So that's just pushed back that project by a couple of months to do those negotiations. So it'll continue going. We're deferring some of those costs into the 2022 Depop. And next one down is the sewer small and medium projects. So for treatment works and mains renewals, it's lower by about nearly $500,000 at this point in time. So there's been a delay in commencement and progress with a number of the projects. So the majority of all these works have now been deferred out until the 21-22 financial year. And a tender will be going out and be issued to incorporate a majority of those works. And that tender should be going out in June, July, coming through. Similar to that, the sewer, the water as well. So obviously the water is also behind by about nearly $600,000. Again, it's mainly delaying the commencement of a number of those projects. And again, it'll be included in that tender going out to do the works. And the last one there in the middle of those two, the Marundi, the reservoir up there, the new one, that project budget is higher at the moment by nearly 200,000, and that's mainly because the works are ahead of schedule. So those works have now been completed, which is good. So overall, when you add all those numbers together, it's about $1.77 million positive to the budget.
Just a question probably for Phil. It's encouraging to see these projects completed and whatever, but it's not quite encouraging to see delayed and behind schedule. We've got a lot of work to do in that area.
Yeah, specifically water and sewer, a lot of that is to do with the fact that we haven't been able to do any capital works internally for most of this year, due mainly to staffing issues. We've had vacancies in our team for years. We can't fill the positions, hence it's all being packaged up to go out to tender. We'll have to package it up and do it in a larger tender rather than chip away at it internally.
So when you say staff issues, do we need to be looking more at
we
sourcing some of this work out?
Well, that's exactly what we're doing. Yeah. Ideally, you'd want to have you'd have a crew doing capital over the course of the year, but we haven't been able to do that.
Okay.
Got a question through you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of the things in there, it was noted that we're investigating it now because we think we've billed it to the wrong sector. Are staff being trained in how to actually do their billing, their daily timesheets and all that sort of whatever, I don't know, whatever it is, so that they're actually sending it through to the right, so we don't have to waste what I would imagine, in this room, there's $1 million worth of pay a year sort of thing, a lot of time in senior management's time when they should be looking at that. So we don't have to investigate where that cost should have come from in the first place. Is there training going on in that arena?
Overall, I think Councillor Burns, that the guys on the ground do get probably 99% of the actual jobs correct, but it's always those occasional ones where it's sort of like dubious. They sort of like they think it might be maintenance, but when the finance people look at it, they go, yeah, that's a renewal. So a lot of those types of things. With the airport side of one, that's effectively just an overview of what the airport reporting officer's role was. So normally that airport reporting officer would be just totally operational. But given that there's been that major development out there, we've taken a bit of a view on it and said, okay, yeah, now probably from a finance point of view, some of that expenditure relates to the capital work. So I think the guys are getting it right out in the field. It's just when you look at it from an accounting point of view, we can bring those things in as the renewals instead of actually being a maintenance thing that may look to the guys in the field as a maintenance item, especially if you've got a pipe and you say, oh, I'll just replace that. It's a maintenance issue.
Yeah, okay. So I suppose where I'm coming from is like the planners would be the ones allocating, that pipe's going there, that house is going there sort of thing. Are the planners putting their thinking caps on to start with and getting it right from the start?
Through the chair, a lot of this would be in maintenance because it'd be reactive, not planned. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion can come across with the guys, where if it's an emergency or reactive issue, they put it to maintenance numbers instead of, a good example is pumps. It's really easy to spend a lot of money on pumps. It'll start out with a repair, a service call out. It'll go to a shop. All of a sudden, it's more cost effective to replace with a new one. That should be capitalised. Sometimes it doesn't. We've got to follow that up.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just ask, so we've had, through you, Mr. Mayor, so we've had staffing issues, which is why this is happening. Do you mean in staffing issues that we don't have the staff? We don't?
Yeah, correct. Vacancies in construction.
So, so back, because through you, Mr. Mayor, and that's why I was a bit concerned that the workforce management plan hasn't been done for this year. So how will we address that going into next year if we don't have those vacancies already filled? Because this will happen again.
All we can do is keep recruiting the vacancies that we have, which is what we do. To address the capital shortfall, that will be addressed with packaging it together in a tender. Apart from that, yeah, it's hard to deal with, I guess, market forces if we go to market and we don't get the applicants. There's
recruiting is proving to be quite difficult. Not sure why, whether all the state money that's around good engineers and we can't compete salary wise with the non-government sector. Look, I've had a job advertised, pretty good job, reasonable pay, not one application. And so we're having to go back out sometimes 2 and 3 times to try and attract applicants to these jobs. It's not for want of trying. It's just the market is quite challenging at the moment.
So just through you, Mr. Mayor, do we need to put up the salaries then? So people aren't interested to come to this area, how are we going to address that?
Well, we are looking at our salary system at the moment, and we have reassessed every position against where we think it should sit. We're in the process of doing that. But the fact of the matter is that we've got a balanced budget, and anything above and beyond that is going to put us in a deficit. The only way we can put on paid staff more is to have less staff. It's as simple as that.
So is this something that's happening through you, Mr. Mayor, across the board with councils in the rural areas?
Correct. Yep.
And so is there any way the state government can help us?
I don't believe so. I'm not sure how they could.
Because this is a really serious issue.
What they could do is get rid of rate pegging, so we can set our rates at a level that's enough to run the council. That's what they can do, in my view.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, it is definitely industry-wide, and particularly in water sewer world. You only have to go online. You'll see just about every council in regional New South Wales has positions vacant for water operators.
Okay, so just moving down to the bottom part of the page 6 there, just with the budget position. So overall, we're still tracking for a balanced budget overall. Obviously, there still remains some pressures from different areas within the organisation, from some business entities, commercial rentals and investment revenues and so forth. So a lot of those, there's a lot of ups and downs in there. So as you can see, when we're looking through the expenditure side, they more or less mirror each other off. So so we've had some savings in some areas, but we've also had some overs in some other areas. So we'll continue to look at those ongoing costs or our operational costs, and just evaluate the discretionary spend, I suppose, is the best thing, and to put that on hold until we get to the end of the year, and that should hopefully alleviate some budgetary pressures. Addition to that, we'll still go through the capital works program. So over the course of the last week, I've been going through looking at the capital works program to back out anything else that we need to back out, so that we can bring that back in for our 21-22 Depop, which will go up as a change to the draft Depop that's out on submission. So we're just going through and making sure that we can bring those back in for next year, to give a true indication of where the 21-22 budget will sit. Moving down into the bank funds and investment report, here we're to the end of May, we've got about $29.28 million in funds, of which 28.7 is in investments. We have a schedule coming through identifying those investments. And the capital works expenditure here to the end of May totaled $38.2 million as the revised capital works program, significant decrease from the $67.2 million that we had when we initially started. Based on that revised 38.2 million, the year-to-date spend is 27.4 million. So as you can see, it only represents 71%. So there's still another $10.8 million to spend in capital works. So, so as I said, we're going through doing more critical review of where those spends are going to be and backing those out to put into next year's Depop, which may mean that some of the projects for next year's Depop, to make it realistic, will push back an extra year moving forward, coming into the play. From there, just moving through the next few pages down to page 9 through to 12. It's just an overview of where our funds are sitting, the general fund, water fund and sewer fund. So obviously the year-to-date variance is there on page 9. You see that the general fund's about 780,000 of that. The water fund's 445,000 of the variation, and the sewer fund's 544. So that's the breakdown of what makes up the 1.77 million. So overall, as you can see, the revised budget's coming through. It comes back with that 4,698. Moving on to the page 10 through to 12 is more or less broken up into the service areas. So across the different areas within council itself. As you can see, with regards to the request votes there's quite significant number of request votes coming through, which is more or less moving monies around from an operational point of view, and seeing where those businesses are going to land, plus also moving our capital works and deferring those capital works out into the next financial year. So a lot of movement happens in non-operating revenue and expenses because we're moving stuff into the restricted assets in and out of those. To give you an overview of the overall votes that are going through for this month, there's a listing there that's on pages 13 through to 16. And on 16, you say the net variation is 0. So we've balanced them off coming all the way through. But as you can see, there's significant votes coming through the mix. And one good one that actually come through that we've just taken up just before we printed the papers was the financial assistance grants came in early again. So we've done the thing going through the RA straight away.
Mr. Mayor, look, just on that page 16,
yep.
And I've asked this a number of times, have we been successful with obtaining any more funds for the cashless sewerage fund? Because we spent $200,000 on these, on the designs and redesigns and all that sort of thing. I mean, it's just chewing things up. What's happening? Okay, otherwise, this Cardno crowd comes back and says, we've got to have another view. What's going on?
No further funding at this stage. Detailed design will be
Have we applied?
For water sewer funding, there's no application process. It's just through discussions with DPI.
But we actually haven't applied.
We've been talking with them, so there's no formal application process. So they're aware of the project where it's up to our financial position.
Is it because Cardno haven't given us a final costing?
Well, we can have kick off those conversations again once we've completed the detailed design and done a QS and we've got a firmer figure, and we can go back to the table and have further discussion.
Yeah, and is there any indication of when that they're going to give us that final costing?
Yeah, the detailed design will be finished in July, is the schedule.
Right. Yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. So as you can see, those votes are there coming down through the mix. And a lot of them there's some in there that are operational, but majority of them relate to capital expenditure, moving those out of the mix. So overall, we've done votes to reduce our capital works down in this month by about $4 million. So we've deferred a lot back out of the system in May. And again, there will be a fair chunk in June as well to push them into restricted assets and so forth. Any questions in regards to that? Yes.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible to have these presented in a bigger format? I find this really hard to read.
Yep. Yeah, I can
So,
I can send a I can do them in an A3.
Yeah, is that how we normally, because, yeah, that's really hard to read.
Yeah, it's pretty hard when it's on an A4 report. That's the only thing. But I can organise to get some prints done in A3. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving then into just the bank rec and the investments, as stated earlier. As you can see by the worm there with the lines, so we've had a big high when we were going into our capital works phase with the airport, and then obviously using cash as we're coming through doing capital works programs. And then the investments held at the 31st of May. As you can see, there's paltry returns on investments there. So we haven't even got one at 1%. They're all below. Unfortunately so.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. With that little graph, what does it say in the box? I can't see, actually can't read that.
That's effectively the blue one is our total bank and investment funds.
Is that what it says?
Yeah. And then the pink one says the investments only. So you've got one line that says these are what the total funds are, total cash and investments. And then the next, the little pink line is just investments only.
So I haven't got the only there, I've just got investment. So
that's the investments.
Right.
Yeah.
It does, that needs to be bigger.
Can't you read that?
I can't read that. I can't read that with my glasses on.
Yeah.
I'd need a magnifying glass for that. I can't read
I've got
that.
magnifiers. All good. So we can try and increase that too, because it comes mainly from Excel spreadsheets, obviously. But then when you put it into Info Council, it shrinks it even more, which is crazy, which makes it difficult. It looks like it's big on one sheet, but when it's actually brought into the Info Council, it seems to shrink it again. You go.
And it's really hard reading this online as well, digitally, because when you try and zoom into that, it gets blurry.
Does it?
Yeah. It's really hard to read this. Really hard.
With
hopefully with Modern Gov, it'll
I was going to say with Modern.gov, the new system we're putting in soon, hopefully it will address all these problems. Yeah. Sometimes if you just paste a graphic or a chart into Info Council, it just doesn't sort of read well.
It's hard to be prepared when
It's really hard reading this. I found this really hard.
I can give you the actual printout of in Excel. It makes it a bit easier to read, if you like.
Have we done it before? Because I haven't. Have we always done it like this?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because they, probably are. But like for infrastructure, it's much clearer. Why is that?
Blow that one right up, and that effectively is the Excel sheet that or the actual capital works program. That actually we print that out in Excel and just PDF it. So it makes a huge difference. It doesn't actually go into the Info Council book itself. Makes a big difference.
it's going to be even harder because council's now talking about not having these.
Yep.
So what are we going to do then?
Well, hopefully when you have the attachments attached to it, you might be able to go into the attachment and then effectively it'll populate in with Excel or Word or whatever the document is. Yep. Which makes a huge difference.
Robin keeps telling me we're not having paper.
We're getting a
copies soon.
new system coming in, probably not this term, but you'll find it'll be a lot easier. The computers will be a lot more, tablets will be a lot bigger. It'll be a lot easier to read. It'll be a lot better than that, what I ever seen.
My kind of iPad's like 1960 anyway, so.
Not a worry. So I can get some extra copies so you can actually read it.
That'd be really
Mr.
great.
Mayor, it's most encouraging to hear some of the younger people in here having the same difficulties that the old fellas having for quite a while.
Where's the young people? Ask.
I don't qualify anymore.
Yeah. I've struggled with it for a long time. In fact, it's quite unreadable, really.
So moving then into the capital works program then, as I said, this is more or less just an overview summary of where the capital works expenditure is based on where the service areas are. And as you can see, that the main movement that's happened in the boats has been around the transport as well as the water and sewer areas, which are the ones that are behind it at this point in time. So all the rest are pretty well running on budget. And then we more or less go into the overall capital works program coming through, just to give you an idea of where all those sit and what votes we've actually raised against the projects that we're going to back out of the system.
They're getting smaller as we go over the pages.
I know.
We're right at the outside.
Actually, it does look better in the A3 version of the thing. Was it? Okay. So we'll try and beef it up and try and make it a bit bigger.
Right out to the outside of the pages, it'll make it so much easier.
Yeah.
In this format,
Yeah,
it's right out to the outside of pages.
Yeah, we did have that on the actual original document, but it shrinks it with Info Council, which is the
If it
pain.
goes that way, you go,
Yeah.
right, it goes that way.
Yeah.
So you'll need twice as many
Many
pages.
pages.
so.
No, but I'm just saying the actual print there now, if that was
Yeah, if
taken
it
right.
goes that way, though, it also
Yeah,
goes that way.
goes
when
down.
you do
We
it.
get a few more.
Yeah, councillor, I think the staff have got it.
Under
It
control.
needs
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
better, so we'll move on, eh?
We'll make it bigger. We'll make it bigger. So just to highlight the last one on page 30 there, as you can see, when we're doing the request votes, $4.2 million relates to the capital works program. So that's why there's so many votes involved in this month. And as I said earlier, the capital works year to date is only 27.4. The revised budget is 38.2, $10.8 million, which is effectively 50 or probably 40% of the spend we've done to date. So I can't see that happening in June. So I'd say that there'd be some more votes coming out the other side. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Wayne. Okay, councillors, back to page 1. There's 5 points of the recommendation. I've got a mover. Move councillor Burns, second. Councillor Watts. All in favour? Against? Carried. Over to page 31, CORP 06.2 Scone Airport Project Update. Chris, have you got the floor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we look at the table on the first page of the report, there's a current period where all of the metrics are in green. So I'll go through each of those. For the scheduled program, as we know, the Airside infrastructure contract is now complete. The Hunter Warbirds contract is progressing well. Works have been delayed in the last month by wet weather. I've lost about 4 days. So when you're concreting, you just can't do that when it rains. All the formwork fills up with mud, then it traps the water, then you've got to pump the water out. So when it rains for a day, you pretty much lose 2 days. You lose that day and the next day to recover. So yeah, we've had a bit of wet weather during the month. Budget, where the Hunter Warbirds is 35% complete by dollar value. Contingency there's still a fair size amount of contingency. However, there is some that we're expecting to spend on some downstream stormwater drainage at the east end of the airport. So that will decrease once we get some pricing on that. We've got some designs and we're getting pricing on that. Variations are all under control. All the variations that have been submitted have been approved. Design, as I've mentioned, we've done the design for some downstream site drainage. We're in the process of final review of audio-visual security and electrical and kitchen and landscaping. We had a meeting down with the designers last week where all but the electrical drawings were reviewed, and so they're all under control now. Fire suppression system, the designers are still finalising that, but we're expecting that this month. On risks, thanks for an extraordinary general meeting of the council, the section 455 variation was approved on the 8th of June. So that has removed the risk of a time delay on that. Contractors are progressing well, and there's been no work health and safety issues on site.
Just Chris, one on the work health and safety, has there been any at all during this construction?
No, there hasn't been.
And I think that comes down to the budget. I know is over, but that gentleman, Mark, is it out there? He has run a very, very tight ship out there. And I think that's why we've got away with no incidents, which is great.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. Mark is running an extremely tight ship out there. And he's got everybody in line, like they know that those are the rules. That's what we've got to comply with. Also, the contractors that were selected have been top notch in their management of their own crews as well. I haven't seen any shortcuts taken. If you raise something with them, it's addressed within 10 minutes.
Yeah, Darracon and Kingston have been excellent in terms of site management.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at the major risks, am I jumping ahead? Were you going to go through those? Just on page 33. Just wondering how we're managing those. And did we have that meeting on the 10th of June?
Yes, the meeting was held on the 10th of June down in Kingston's office, and we had Freeman Ryan Design come up from Sydney. They're the ones that are doing the Warbirds display with inside the big museum hangar. And there was 4 members of staff from council down at that meeting. It was a very, very positive meeting. We made a lot of progress and clarified a lot of who was doing what. There was a little bit of grey area as to which of the 3 parties was going to do some of the actions that needed to be done. And as simple as who was supplying the cabinets, the racks for the IT gear. So yes, that was a really good meeting, which clarified a lot of those grey areas. In the last month, the Hunter Warbirds, some major works completed was the screw piling was completed for the footings. The concrete slab of the main hangar, 8 of the 10 slab sections were poured, and they've started the formwork on the terminal side. Now, when I say 8 of the 10 sections, they've finished those 8, and then the 2 sections left are where the entrance road is, where the concrete trucks come in. So they'll skip over those and go over to the Warbirds terminal, do the concreting works there, and then complete the last 2 pours. It's a bit like, say, you don't paint yourself into a corner. Over the next month, and last month, the car park was sealed and the lines were marked. And the only vehicles we're allowing on that are light vehicles, like cars. There's no trucks or construction equipment allowed in there. Next period, the fire suppression design will be completed. As I mentioned, the concrete slabs will be completed. Looking at completing those next week. And then we'll start on Monday. We're starting the erection of the structural steel. They had to wait till the concrete cured before they got cranes in on it. And so they've got the concrete test results back, and it's got the required strength now in the concrete. So they'll get the cranes in and they'll have to set up on the slab itself to lift the steel work into place. On Airside Civil Works, there's some downstream drainage work required for the stormwater flow. We're waiting on quotes from contractor on those. And that work will also include the asphalt engine rev up pad, which is an asphalt pad 20 by 20 so that the planes can rev up to full speed. They do an engine test before they take off. Critical issues, it says on the report, finalising of all of those designs. As I said last week, we had a meeting, because this was done as at the end of last month. We had a meeting on the 10th, which we addressed those issues. And also, during the month, the Hunter Warbirds Project Control Group was formed to manage the business functions, the upcoming business functions of the facility, which is things like staff recruitment, leasing of the cafe, promotions, events. So that's been formed and that will meet monthly to make sure that those issues are all addressed.
That's an internal group. Yep. We just thought as we're getting closer, we've got this thing opening in December, so we're just doing all the fine tuning at the moment with in accordance with the business plan. So it's general manager, myself, David, Chris, and Beck Morrison. Yeah, we're picking tiles and colours and furniture, and just a bit like when you're building your house, it's all those things at the end that you need to yeah.
Chris, just on that, the report that you gave me a couple of weeks back on the Stafford group, is that going to be going to councillors in the near future?
It can go to councillors, but not to the public.
Yeah,
I'm quite happy for councillors to have it because it's got our. We're not going to publish this because it's got our trade secrets, which we don't want to particularly reveal to our competition with staffing and pricing strategies and marketing and stuff like that.
So be safe enough to say if councillors wish to come in and go through
Very
it.
more than happy
really like that out into the public.
More than happy for councillors to come in and have a look.
Do you, Mr Mayor? No offence, but 4 men and 1 female picking out colours. Do we think we could balance that a little bit?
It's a little bit sexist, councillor.
I know it probably is a little bit sexist, but I'm just thinking what the I'm just thinking what the outcome might be. Is greys and blacks?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Just in saying that, then if before that's final, can we bring it back to us to have a look at or not?
Which aspect?
The colours, just so we don't lay tiles on someone that's not happy. I mean, is it worthwhile just spreading it amongst councillors or not?
Can, but there will always be somebody that's not happy.
Okay.
They're in my office if you want to come back.
There you go, councillor Watts. They're in his office.
I'll be there.
Yep.
I'm not good with colour.
Anybody's welcome.
Thank you.
The colours that are fitting with the Warbirds era, so they're not the modern tiles that you would buy now to put in a new house, although. So if we get on to the contract completion dates, the Airside infrastructure was completed on the 28th of April. The Warbirds visitor attraction, or the Hunter Warbirds, and the current, as at the end of the month, the expected completion date was 17th of November, but as I said, we've lost about 4 days this month due to rain already in June. But we're well on track to finish prior to the end of December, or even at the moment, it's the end of November. It just depends how much it rains. And when we're doing the steel work, one of the risks is if we get the wind, like windy periods in July and August, you can't use cranes in the wind. So we'll just have to manage that.
There is also an airport that was built there because of the wind. So that it's bloody windy all the time. So I don't expect the need to go.
So if we turn the page now over to the cost information, year to date, which is project to date, on this we've spent just under 11.8 million. And we're expecting, of course, some invoices to come in for June.
So, councillors, as it stands, our contingency is around $450,000 at the moment, but could have little bits and pieces coming along, but certainly it's not looking like it's going to go over budget at this stage.
And the risks, I think we've already addressed. So are there any questions?
Yes, well, the risk with obtaining staff, how big a risk is that? If we're having a problem getting staff in general?
For the project, you mean?
Yeah, well, no, I'm looking staff for the centre, including gift shop, cafe and kitchen.
Oh, okay, okay. I think there'll be quite a lot of interest in people wanting to work in a brand new facility like this. I don't think we're going to have problems.
Why is that listed as a risk?
Sorry?
Why is that being listed as a risk then?
Well, that risk was identified due to the change in staff internally from when Joanne and Alan were here, and that's migrated over to Chris now and David. And that was flagged a risk at the time, but we don't see that as a risk anymore because we think the team's doing a great job.
Okay, and with the unsuccessful opening event risk, how do we manage that risk?
When we do the planning for the event, it'll have a risk management plan. You mean the opening of the Warbird Centre?
I'm just looking at the risk that's listed here. Yes, I'm guessing that's what that means.
Well, the risk of that is you don't have the staff in place, you don't have your merchandise in place, you don't have your point of sale and ticketing. That's why we've developed a new PCG we've Gantt charted all those steps and we're managing all that process, the pre-opening.
What was the abbreviation you just said?
Sorry?
What did you just mention?
Project Control Group, PCG.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not a risk then? You don't think that's a major risk?
No, we don't believe it's a major risk. No.
To you, Mr. Mayor, I think it's just written incorrectly. Maybe you
Yeah.
need a low, medium, high, and whether it's already achieved. The way it's written, it looks like that it could be an issue in relation to it, but yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, Chris. Firstly, well done to what you took over, jumped into Al Fletcher's shoes. I think you've done very, very well on the reports from out there. You're certainly mixing yourself amongst all the users out there, and there's a lot of good feedback. So thank you for that. The second one, we talked about the staffing. I think we'll find there'll be a lot of interest from community members that want to be involved. There already has been with helping clean the terminals or sweep up a bit of waste or something, and there's quite a few interested already.
Yeah, one of the positions we've got is marketing and volunteer management. So there'll be somebody tasked with managing volunteers because we're expecting a lot of volunteers to come on board with us.
And just quickly, the opening date, you've set that for the air show, isn't it? I didn't see it in there, or is it in there? The air show date.
No, the air show's.
No, but just the opening of
The opening
of that function centre will be the same day as
it'll be
March sometime.
No, the centre will be open from December.
No, but the official opening.
Oh, the official opening will be just before the air show. There'll be a soft opening and then the official opening.
I think you're wrong there. I think you'll find there may be a very soft opening, but the grand opening will be the day of the air show, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The soft opening when we open the centre, and then the hard or the grand opening.
Yeah, right. So
yeah, hard and grand. So it's.
So what I'm asking for the date of that is March.
March. Yep.
Date. It's been put in concrete. Okay, that's all right.
Yeah,
I'll find out.
It's probably the second or third week of March.
Okay, no further questions. Back to page 31, the recommendation that council receive the report and note the information. Move Councillor Burns, second Councillor Campbell. All in favour? Against? Carried. Over to page. Oh, there you go, 26th of March. Okay, councillors, over to page 40. Councillor questions, Councillor Fisher. And that is all. So just for notation, Going to move it for just for note that move, councillor Burns, second councillor Campbell. All in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, we'll go around to councillors' questions. Councillor Watts. Councillor Abbott.
Yes, just further to Councillor Fisher's question from last month. I note that there's directive from the government that councils no longer have to complete plans of management for community land on Crown reserves by the 1st of July. So what date do we have to do it by?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they haven't given us a date. The actual instruction is as soon as practicable. So there's no firm date. They may come back with a date, but the fact of the matter is that I'm not aware of any council who has been able to complete this on time. So they haven't given us a date, but I think they will eventually. But there's no date set in concrete at this stage from the government.
So so how does that affect our planning now?
Oh look, we'll keep going. We'll keep going with it, and we'll just do it as quickly as we can.
I think Menindee might have. I was just looking it up last night. So when and yes, okay. So at the moment we're still intending to do this.
Yeah. We're still progressing, but we don't have that June 30 pressure,
Right.
which was
Yeah.
causing us quite a lot of stress, to be honest.
Okay.
And everybody else as well, because
Yeah.
we submitted those initial classifications in September. We haven't heard back yet, so
They're overwhelmed.
The problem isn't all at councils at
No.
the end. It's with Crown Lands.
Okay, thank you. And just, yes, question. So with the workforce management plan, which I've raised already, so we're intending to do that next year because it's a 4-year plan, is it? But it does have, we have it in the Depop as something we do every year. So obviously this is an issue, the workforce management planning. And so what are we going to do about that through you, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. We will start that after the election of the new council, and we do that in parallel with all the other IPNR documents that we need to complete with the community strategic plan, the workforce management plan, and asset management plan.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we've
And
done
all
the
the
asset
other
management
plans.
plans though, haven't we?
Yep.
Yep. So
we review them during this period.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more the asset management strategy that we have to review as part of the new IPNR suite.
Okay. All right. And then just with through you, Mr. Chair, have we always stockpiled materials at our waste facilities? Is that something we've always done?
Through the chair, we stockpile all sorts of different materials. We've got green waste, we've got scrap metal,
Yep.
building, demolition waste, those sorts of things. So we do have stockpiles at our waste facilities.
And so we've always been able to go and access them. It's just, I wasn't aware of this, but I find that very reassuring.
So in the past, with excess material, soil material and so forth, we've used for cover in our landfills. We now have a new piece of equipment that actually sprays like an emulsion on a posi. It's called posi shell, sprays an emulsion on the waste for daily cover. So the need for that soil material is less now. So we do have excess soil that we can potentially take back out.
Okay.
It is clean fill.
Thank you. And yes, I just wanted to know the paper through you, Mr. Chair. The papers seem very small for this meeting. Is this how? I mean, I haven't attended a corporate services meeting for a few months. Is this how it is now?
Yeah, with the detailed budget, we only do it every quarter. That's in line with the IPNR reporting requirements. Most councils felt that the agenda was way too big to consider every month, and staff spent half their month doing statistics rather than work. So that's why we have just this in its reduced form. That was agreed to by council. So every quarter, we'll go back to what we were receiving every month, and that's in accordance with the IPNR reporting guidelines. You actually only have to do it every 6 months, but most councils like us do it every quarter.
Yep. Okay, thank you. That's and then I did ask about a while back for a legal brief through you, Mr. Legal briefing at some stage with respect to the agreement council has with Pays. So I don't know when is that likely to happen. It looked like it could, or should I just put my questions through to you or the general manager or both?
We actually did have a workshop that was discussed and Mr. Pay attended.
Yep.
I don't think you were
okay.
present.
So is there?
We did have a specific
minutes?
council workshop on that.
So you do have minutes of that or something I can read?
No, we didn't take minutes of the
So
meeting.
can you
It was-
brief me on that meeting at some stage that you had, that workshop that I missed?
We're quite happy for you to come and talk to me and the general
Okay.
manager about
So
it.
should I come and talk to you as opposed to the general manager, or both of you?
Both of us
Okay,
together, I think.
all right,
yeah.
thank you very much.
We're more than happy to do that, Councillor
Yeah,
Abbott.
thank you. And I think that was all my, oh, yes. And is there anywhere where there are a list of KPIs that we haven't met? Do we, because we have a list, don't we, of KPIs
Yeah, that'll be coming back to council.
at the June meeting?
Yes.
So as part of the annual report, we'll
Oh,
report on all that.
hello.
Sorry,
Yes.
Councillor. I came in when I heard you talking about the airport. I've been listening online.
Oh, cool.
So I wasn't going to interrupt the meeting. I wasn't going to interrupt the meeting, but I've been listening online and I thought I'd just duck in for this part. All KPIs will be reported in the annual report. So we'll report on which ones we've met and which ones we haven't met. At the moment, it's a little bit difficult to get a target. We're sort of aiming at around about 70 to 80% probably in that range. Our expectation is to try and get that higher, but it's a little bit hard because a lot of target matters are actually due on the 30th of June. So we don't know until the 30th of June whether we've actually met them or not.
Thank you. So just for clarification, so we are going to be getting that at the June meeting?
Not at the June meeting. They won't be finalised by then. We may have initial reports. We can probably provide that within a week or two after the June meeting.
So we've got nothing on that before the June meeting?
No, because the June meeting's before the 30th of June and the staff don't generally do their KPIs until, a couple of weeks after the close of the month. But Wayne can probably give you his time frame.
Yep. Effectively with the quarterly review, we actually have the KPIs in that quarterly review, and that's in the draft form before there's other KPIs in there that rely on the end of financial year financial statements and things like that. But we'll have a very first cut draft in the quarterly review that we're doing.
So do we have anything like right now in real time of what we have and haven't met? Is there any list I can look at?
We have the May KPIs
Mhm.
that have been published in the last week or two, probably from staff. And as I said, they're sitting around about the 70 to 80% projection mark.
So is that a document I can look at?
Yeah, they're probably not all that accurate at this stage. That's the only concern I'd have with circulating it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So effectively, we've got an updated version at this point in time that went to SMG. So it goes to the senior management group coming through. And the senior management group has gone back to staff to actually review those KPIs to actually see whether or not that they are a valid red indicator if they are not beating target. So at this point in time, they're in very draft form. So we firm those up at the quarterly meetings and say, this is what the actual KPIs are up to the end of June. And as I said, with the June one that will be issued with the papers for June, which is in the July meeting that we have for corporate services, they'll be the draft, but they're not the ones that actually relate to the financial statements because the financial statements haven't been completed, but they will be effectively the KPIs for everything barring the actual financial statements.
Okay, so the Depop coming up, we won't know all this before we approve that.
No, because the Depop gets adopted before June 30 and our KPIs are finished, they're financial year end based.
Yeah.
Okay, and it does seem, I think that's problematic. Also, just with respect through you, Mr. Mayor, with funding or projects that we were subject to funding.
Yep.
I asked if we could have a list of those.
Yes,
that
I'm actually going through and getting a list of those unfunded projects for the 2022 year.
Mhm.
So you can have a look. As I mentioned, Councillor, that there isn't a lot of unfunded projects, but there is ones there that we've put in there with grant funding. Obviously, with a lot of our capital works that we've done previous years is that we've put in like a wish list of trying to get funding for projects, which indicated with the $67 million capital works budget, a lot of that was on a wish.
Mhm.
trying to get funding for. But as you can see, we backed out a lot of that funds coming through. So we're trying to make it more realistic and what we can actually achieve and what we've actually funded coming through. If we are successful with some grant funded projects that come from left field and we actually secure some funding for projects, we'll bring those into the actual program as a grant funded project during the year. So,
Okay, thank you. So there will be, you will be able to provide me
Correct.
with a list
Yep.
of the,
Yep.
thank you. Okay, thank you. That's,
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I just raise one more point? Councillor, just as we've said before, often when you go to apply for grants, they want to know, well, can you show us it in your Depop? Even though we haven't got it funded at the time of we develop it,
Yeah.
we put it in there to safeguard against losing those applications because it's not in our planning documents.
no, I understand.
That's why we put it in.
I
It's sort of,
understand that.
it's a bit convoluted, but there is a method in it.
No, I understand that, but I'd like to see what was subject to grant funding that didn't get grant funding. Thank you.
Also, just to clarify, Councillor Abbott, with regards to the Depop KPIs, that's for next year. So the effect or the actual whether we've achieved the KPIs for the current financial year doesn't have a bearing on the Depop for the 21-22 year, because they're the KPIs that we should be meeting. So,
No, but if we haven't met them, that's a problem for the community, isn't it? That we said we would.
if we
and
haven't met
haven't.
them in this current financial year, we anticipate that we meet them next.
So
financial
that's a given, is it? So if we haven't met them, they
If
will
we haven't
be
met- if
put
we have-
into,
if we haven't met the KPIs
Mhm.
in this current financial
Yep.
year, there must be some reasoning behind why we haven't met those KPIs. But in reality, to get a 90% success rate, we should have met 90% of those KPIs that we've actually targeted. So when we've gone through and done the Depop, we've actually put those measures in, and that's what the expectation of councillors and the community are expecting us to achieve. So it shouldn't diminish. The fact that we haven't met it in the 2021 year, doesn't mean that we shouldn't have achieved it.
no, I absolutely
So,
agree with that.
yeah.
But so how will we address that for the ones we have missed for next year if they're not necessarily in the Depop because we should have met them this year?
That's an item for the general manager and the senior management group to make sure that staff achieve those KPIs moving into the 21-22 year, because that's how it's been set for staff to achieve and for the community.
So just through you, Mr. Mayor, just to give clarity around that, some KPIs are trends, the days, number of days taken to meet development processing times, for example. If we don't meet it this year, there's nothing we can do. It's just a non-met KPI. We recognise it. We put in practices to try and address it going forward and try to get our processing times better the next year. If it's a KPI to do certain works by 30th of June, for example, and we meet it, that KPI can be carried over into the next year and a new date set and a new KPI set to achieve that work. So there are different KPIs which are probably treated slightly differently depending on whether it's a fixed deadline to complete a certain project or whether it's a trend to try and meet certain performance measures.
Okay, thank you. So we will, yes, so just in answer, further to my question, so we will get some sort of report as to how we're tracking them. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I just to clarify, I'm concerned that we're looking at various KPIs and various things like, but the report that we will get in July will be the accurate report, which we can all divulge and know that that is exactly what's happening. The reports that we've been talking about before that time are really only, well, perhaps not they may not be accurate, they may not be achieved. So what we're getting, the one in July, will be the one that will be the correct report. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, councillor. As I said earlier, there's some measures in there that obviously we can't actually do, being the financial statements. So we won't know those KPIs until the financial statements are finalised and audited. But as for the other KPIs that finish on the 30th of June, we'd know whether or not we'd finish something by the 30th of June at that meeting.
So just further to that, given that was a comment to my question, so will I, through you, Mr. Mayor, will you still provide me with what I've requested at this meeting?
I'm just reluctant to give out KPIs that are mid-term KPIs. We do provide them to councillors every quarter. What you're asking for is mid-term KPIs, which give an indication of where we're heading, but they won't be an indication of where we're at. That's the only problem.
So to be clear, I'm asking for KPIs that we should have met at the end of this financial year. So that's what I want, the information on those, if that's possible.
Yes, but as I said, we haven't
Yeah, I
finished this
understand
financial
about the
year.
trends.
So there are some KPIs that we know they're tracking in the right direction. And I can say to you, yes, I think they're going to meet the 30th of June target, but I don't really know that until I've got to the 30th of June and confirm it. If we have some major event between now and the 30th of June,
Yeah, I understand that.
stops us meeting that target, then I can say to you, I'm on track to meet 90%, and all of a sudden I'm only hitting 70. So my concern is I can tell you how we're travelling at each quarter, and that's what we've provided council at each quarter. We've told you, here we are, this is where we expect to be at the quarter, and here's how we're tracking in regard to our target at the quarter. By the middle of July, we'll have all of the June figures in, some of the finance, but the finances won't be closed off. So we'll have most of it in by middle of July. And then at the annual report, we'll do a final report, which are all the KPIs. As I said, I'm just a little bit reluctant about giving you a half-baked document now because I'm not sure, I can't give you any confidence about that data.
So I won't get anything then before the June.
Probably not before the July meeting is when you'll see the first formal document.
Thank you.
Okay, councillor, I think that's completely up to the general manager how he's going to handle that, and Wayne. So we'll move on. Councillor, just yesterday, I think this is the right spot. Went down to the youth centre. Councillor Watson and I went down and met the Burning Bright campsite students to head away, and I was asked a question: is there any chance of the youth centre being able to use the BP site for a game of cricket or a game of softball or a game of just to get them outside when they meet? Can we discuss that at some stage? I know it's only a temporary basis, but we own the land. So can that just be put into a discussion at some stage?
Well, it's not contaminated anymore. I mean, if it was cleaned up and I couldn't see
It would have to be
but
made,
that'd up to
would
you.
have to be made safe.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. But I mean, I just asked the question that they would get those youth children, because they're trying to build it, to get them outside and do a bit of a outside kick. Just a notice, that's all.
Why can't they just go down to Scone Park or Bill Rose? We've got.
I suppose they
more
can, but it's not
facilities
quite
there
as
as
easy
well.
as that because they got their own little group area, their own place to use.
Well, it's actually because they're signed in and signed out, so they wouldn't be able to go down there unless they were as a group. So everyone would have to do it. And I mean, it's just it would be a gate and a bit of a cleanup.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll just leave that to the staff. Thank you. Burns, any questions? Councillor Campbell? Okay. We'll move into, someone like to move me into closed council, please. Move Councillor Burns, second Councillor Watts. All in favour? Against?